Welcome, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Glad you all could make it. It's a little more crowded than we had in our last one, so I'll just warn you, I do a lot of walking around to make sure that people are caught up, so I may be ducking behind you or you at some point to try to get by. But don't worry, the class is for you. You can go ahead and start eating anytime. So the first part, I'm going to be doing some talking, so you have an opportunity to eat. And then the second part of the class, you're going to be doing some more hands-on stuff. So you can keep eating then, but you have both of your hands free right now. So I recommend digging into a sandwich. So thank you very much for coming. I am Rob Faludi, and I'm an advisor and consultant for connected device companies. I like the term connected devices even more than IoT. It's not an acronym, but all means the same thing. And I have a pretty comprehensive background in XBee. So I was the chief innovator at Digi International for about 7 years. And worked there. I did outreach to the maker community. I was also the original product owner on the original XBee Cellular product. So a lot of what you have your hands on, I'm at least in part responsible for. And this is not my first workshop. I do a lot of teaching. I've taught at New York University in the media technology program and School of Visual Arts, a few other places. So I'm fairly used to talking to students. And actually wrote a book about XBee. That was before I even started it as a Digi employee, called Building Wireless Sensor Networks. It was written for O'Reilly, the people with the animals on the covers of their books. And went into, that wasn't about cellular at the time, it was about ZigBee, part of the XBee product line. So a lot of background in XBee, but there's always something new to learn. And that happens to me almost every time I work with XBee. There's something interesting or new to know about. Digi International, the company that makes the XBee, is a leading global provider of industrial and mission critical IoT or connected devices. And we help customers create products, but also help them monitor them, deliver solutions, and kind of work with the connected device throughout its entire life cycle. So all the way to the end of the product's life, Digi will keep you supported. The company was founded in 1985, so it's been around a long time, which means that when we make a device, we know it's going to have a lifespan, and we know at some point that lifespan is going to come to the end. And we're going to have a nice EOL process and last time buys. And so we're really used to taking care of customers and making sure the customers come back to us. Even once the product they originally bought, maybe technology has moved on, it's outmoded, we're going to keep that support going for a long time. So very satisfying to work in that environment. But we're here today to talk about one particular product line, which is the Digi XBee. And Digi XBees are modules for connectivity, for ZigBee, for cellular, for LoRaWAN. But I think they're much more than just a module, because there's this whole ecosystem built around them of supporting devices, supporting software, supporting hardware. Third parties also make devices and hardware and systems for XBee. And all of that comes together. There are examples online. There's a really rich amount of content about XBee and XBee Cellular. So we talk about it as a single socket that allows you to connect to IoT and networks all over the globe, no matter what protocol they're running. And I counted them recently, and in our supported devices, we have 16, depending on how you count them, about 16 different wireless protocols are supported. So different kinds of cellular, ZigBee 802.15.4, Digi Mesh, we support Bluetooth, so lots of ways in and out of the products. And then there's a whole family of gateways. These are cellular LTE devices, so they don't use a gateway, but they don't use a gateway that we have control over. Often the cell tower, of course, yes. But a whole line of management tools, and we'll be looking at some of those today too. And third-party adapters. Well, you've got one right on your desk there. So the adapters for the XBee that you'll be using today and the sensor are made by a company called SparkFun Electronics out of the US, out of Boulder, Colorado. They make a lot of fast prototyping stuff. So what they're trying to do is support the prototyping and the piloting end of the XBee life cycle. Then eventually you get into production, you probably build it into your own host device, you use the various support tools, and take things from there. So all the way from the initial idea and prototype, all the way through production and into maintenance mode. We'll give you support. Specifically today, we're going to talk about XBee Cellular. And XBee Cellular is a pre-certified module. That means it's gone through the FCC and CE certification process. It's gone through PTCRB. It's gone through certifications with some US carriers that require additional certification like AT&T. And so you can use that module right out of the box. It's all ready to go. There are some regulations. If you build it into a product, you may have to go through certification anyway, but it will be much faster because you're using a module that's already passed certification. So the remaining variables are things like maybe your enclosure or an antenna type, much easier things to approach. So the idea here is always to save time, to save NRE, and to get to market faster. So that's the value that you see here. The XBee Cellular we're using today supports LTE-M or Cat-M and NB IoT. It can be put into either mode. Both are low bandwidth cellular LTE protocols. They work a little differently. Today we're going to be using LTE-M. We also make modules that support Cat1, which has more bandwidth, and Cat4, which has even more. LTE-M behaves basically the same as the other two, which is why it's nice to use. NB-IoT is a little different structure, so we can talk about that a little if people have questions. In the module, and one of the things we're going to be relying on today is embedded support for a programming language called MicroPython. How many of you have worked with Python or MicroPython already at all? Okay, few. Python, very popular programming language. MicroPython is Python specifically built for microcontrollers. So it knows it doesn't have an operating system like Linux under it. It's just got like an RTOS under it. But it is feature rich. Most of the things you can do in regular Python, you can do in MicroPython, and it adds a bunch of microsecond timing that regular Python doesn't have. It leaves all that to the operating system. So you can do microcontroller-y like things like bit banging out, something you could do with MicroPython. We also have Bluetooth Low Energy, BLE, on the module, and that can be used for configuration. We're also showing it in the sensor lab downstairs. It can be used for beaconing, for indoor location-based services, or if you want to read a Bluetooth sensor and then take that information and ship it up over cellular, you can do that too. We have a demo of that as well. Lots of ways in and out of the module. So we talked about cellular and Bluetooth, but there's also two UARTs, so you can make two different serial connections. SPI, I2C, which we'll be using today with the sensors, and which really requires that MicroPython programming environment. You can't just connect to I2C and have it work. You have to actually interpret things and run libraries, and we can do all that. We'll be doing that today. And then GPIO, so digital I/O, and ADC, PWM, so analog I/O as well, are directly available. We, of course, allow you to connect to Azure or Amazon Web Services to ship your data. That's totally fine. You're never locked in. We do have our own cloud system called Digi Remote Manager. We'll be using that to ship data today. But you could just as easily send your data up to AWS for your application, and you can even use both together. So like I said, there's no lock-in, but Digi Remote Manager is a really useful service, and I do like to talk about it and show it. But it is not a requirement for using XBee Cellular. It is just recommended. And all of this is packaged together with a suite of security features that we call Digi Trust Fence. And Digi Trust Fence includes everything from SSL, TLS communications to secure boot to a special chip inside the XBee Cellular that's just for encryption, so you can securely store certificates, that sort of thing, so your AWS certificate has a place to live where even if someone gets in there debugging tools and lifts the chip, they're not going to be able to get into that chip itself. It's an extremely secure area. So all these things together, we like to think of security as a suite. It's not just one feature or another are included. So today, what we're going to do, the very first thing we're going to do is sign you up for Digi Remote Manager, just so you have an account. And the reason I do that first is it takes a day or so for Digi to process the request and get back to you. So we'll do that first, so you'll have your own account and that process is started. But then once we're working today, we're all going to just log into the same account to see our devices and the data. When you go back and start working with your kits, you'll have your own account and you'll be able to see your own information there. After that, we'll do an overview of the hardware. We'll also take a look at Digi XBee Studio, which is Digi's new configuration tool for XBees. Talk a little about Digi Remote Manager, a little more at some of its features, and then we'll do an end-to-end sensor exercise. So we're going to actually get your devices connected and sending data all the way up to the cloud today. Because we only have an hour, we're taking some shortcuts. I've created some kind of easy installers, a profile. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. But once you get started with your kit and your getting started guide, you'll actually work through all of the steps by hand to do that. So some of what you're doing today may seem like a little bit of a gloss. It's just because we don't have a ton of time. But everything we do, you'll be able to see the innards of once you work through with your own kit. And at the end of this class, we'll hand out kits, SIM cards, and explain all that. So when we're done with all that, I like to, because it's an embedded conference, I like to go over the pinouts and just talk about what the device is and how it works a little. And that will be the end. Should we suddenly have extra time, I have a plan for Bluetooth and MicroPython, but an hour hasn't proven to be enough for that, so we'll probably skip those. Both of those will be covered in your Getting Started guide completely, so you won't miss any of this. All right, any questions before we get started? Please stop me and ask questions along the way. Even though we only have an hour, we're here for you. All right, so yeah, we're not going to do the if time allows, probably. All right, so the first thing you want to do is go to www.digi.com/DRM for Digi Remote Manager. You can do that on your laptop. Let's see if you guys are logged in. Otherwise, I'll have to give you the secret password. And the secret password is Digi, all lowercase. So go ahead and get yourselves logged in. And if there's two of you, at least set up one of you with DRM. You can do this later as well. But I'll give you a minute just to get that done.
If you don't have a laptop, you just even do it on your phone or anything too.
Yeah, I think it should work on the phone. Oh boy, I'm going to have to get you guys. You can do the free. You agree, log in, and just let it do its thing. All right. All right. These all lost their Wi-Fi connection, so yeah, the regular free network is fine. You guys got this one going? No? Okay. Oh, it's not even on. Let's get that part done. All right. I'll get you guys logged in.
Small.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right, yeah, so you can do free. Agree and log in. And yeah, you're all set. So you can go to www.digi.com/grm. Can I see the problem you're having here? Okay. No, that's silly. Not good with this new keyboard.
Maybe a wrong network?
Oh, no network. Okay, there's the problem. Oh, no, that's right. That's fine.
Yeah, we
Hold
were
on.
looking further back up.
Privacy error. Don't be silly. Yeah.
Just a little bit. There you go. Now you've got a 90-day free trial. When you click on there, you just...
All right, if we can't get this one going, we'll figure out something else. Ugh.
Wi-Fi's a little bit slow, but you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, you have to accept, I guess, at advanced.
I don't know.
HTTP without S.
Yeah, no, it's not working at all. I don't know why. Can we go connect to anything else?
So you can just add your information, depending on who wants to. You can do this.
He said he already did it.
We were going to use a
okay.
separate account for the website.
There we go.
So we have like a free account.
It's waiting
set
for us
up
to do
just
that.
run all these through.
There,
we can
that's
have
the
all
problem.
devices
Free.
on
This
account.
is just
This
for
is
when
free.
you take the kit
Yes.
home with you.
No.
Ah, okay.
Because like Rob mentioned, it might take 24 to 40 hours just to validate the account. Just so when you get back home, you're ready to go. You're back in the office, you want to do everything.
Perfect. Okay, and you want to do 90-day free trial.
Thank you.
Okay, it should be loading it now. There you go. All right, so you can fill out this. I don't know why it came pre-filled there. All right, you guys can keep going on the login if you need to, but I'll keep moving just so we don't run out of time. Don't worry, this is mostly just talking. So normally in the workshop, we'll have you open the kit and assemble all the devices. To save time today, I've assembled all of them for you, and they all have SIMs in them, and they're all up and running. But I will go over what's actually on your desk. Now, you only have one antenna connected, but the rest of this stuff is here. So the star of the show is the Digi XBee Cellular Global, which is this purple device right here. You can see it has a SIM card inserted in it already. These are SIMs from G&D. There are 3 antennas that come with the kit. So there's an LTE antenna, which is connected to your device right now. The device also supports GNSS or GPS, and that requires its own antenna, which is in the kits. I didn't set it up because we're not using it today. And then if you want to use Bluetooth, there is an external antenna for that as well. So all of those together make up your kit. We also have a sensor, a temperature and humidity sensor from SparkFun Electronics, and that's plugged into a SparkFun development board. Now, Digi makes a development board for XBees as well, but SparkFun's one of our partners. I talked about the third-party ecosystem, and they stripped it down and made one that was actually considerably cheaper than the one we offer, which is great because we don't want to make money on development boards. We want to make our money selling XBees to happy XBee customers. So they got all this work done for us, and they put on one of their quick connectors. And this is a standardized I2C connector arrangement that they use with all of their sensors and actuators. And that makes it very easy to just plug in a sensor or plug in a relay or a display or something like that and begin using it immediately. So that's how we're set up. And a couple other things to point out about your development board. There's a battery connector, so you can plug in a small lithium polymer battery. And this USB connection provides both data access, so you can talk and configure your XBee module, but also will provide power and charge the battery. So if you want to, and if you plug a battery into these, you can get it charged directly and use this as your main prototyping platform. So you can grab that, take it out in the field, it's got a battery. When your battery is flat, come back in and charge it up again, all on the same board. I do want to point out there is a switch on this side of the board and some lights, and let's take a look at those. So the switch switches between this second USB-C connector, which is used for updating the firmware on the modem or direct access to the internal cellular component. Or because they share pins with I2C. So you just want to make sure that the switch is in the down position towards I2C because that's the way we'll be using it today. There are also 3 status LEDs here. One is marked ASC for association for legacy reasons, but basically that's the blinking blue light. And when it's blinking, that means that you have a good connection. If it's not blinking, that one's not, we're gonna have to look at that one and see why. There's also a user LED that you can program in MicroPython to do whatever you want. And I'll just go back one slide here to point out 2 slides. There we go. There's also 2 buttons. One is a reset button. That's a hardware reset for everything on the board. And then there's a secondary button supported on the board, and that's a user button. So you can use MicroPython to program that to do whatever you want when it's pressed, or long pressed, or however you want to deal with it. One other thing I like to point out, we've already put your XBees in the board, but when you insert it, there's a 20-pin connector, 10 pins on each side, and it is very easy to be 1 pin off and have one sticking out there. You will make this mistake. We all have made this mistake with XBees. So if you plug in your XBee and it's not working, the first thing to do is look and see, did I get all 20 pins into the socket? Because I guarantee at some point within the first week of using XBees, you'll be 1 pin off and bewildered. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. And then you move it back one, this won't destroy it, but it just won't function. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, was everyone able to work through the Digi Remote Manager request process? Good, okay. So the next thing we're going to do, on the desktop of your computer, there is, it's green and not gray, but it's this shape icon for XBee Studio. And you go ahead and open up XBee Studio. And first we're going to just talk about some of the features in there, and then we're going to use it. So XBee Studio is the latest configuration program for XBees. There were 2 previous programs, both called XCTU. Those still work, but XBee Studio has an updated graphical interface, and one of the best features of it is it actually works in conjunction with Digi Remote Manager. So if you have a collection of, let's say, XBee cellulars, let's say you have 1,000 of them, they're all connected to our cloud solution Remote Manager, you can use the desktop application to actually get at those and do any configuration thing either locally, as you're plugged in right now through USB, or anywhere in the world through Digi Remote Manager. So you can change settings, you can load files into the file system, it doesn't matter where the device is. And this is a really powerful concept for connected devices. It's not only are they able to connect and send some data, but you can get back to them and control this whole army of devices. Super important for security because the security world is ever changing. You have to be able to do updates. And really useful also for new features that you want to put into your product, new ideas that you have, better ways of doing things, bug fixes. All of those things are reasons where you really have to have over-the-air access to as much as possible. And that's one of the main features of Digi Remote Manager, and that's been brought out into the configuration tool as well. So when we're using Digi XBee Studio, when you start it up, you'll see a screen that looks kind of like this. And it'll show you all the different devices that are currently plugged in and how they're connected. So this is just showing the 3 devices connected to a cloud account. You will see probably a single device, yep, I think you all have it, that is connected, let's see, Alec, can you help them get connected? And how are we doing on blinky lights? Oh, it reconnected itself. Good, okay. Yeah, it automatically connects, and if there's a problem, it'll go back and reconnect, but I always like to keep an eye on that.
We want to get to the local device, right, Rob?
Yeah, just so his screen looks like, yeah, that's perfect. You got it. Thanks, Alec. Okay. So the first thing you can do is choose your device, and that's real easy. You just take your mouse and click on the device itself here. And once you click on the device itself, you will see a screen that looks like this. And I wanted to point out something here once you get to the screen. So there are, because people find it sometimes a little confusing, there are two menus and they both have similar-ish icons. So this is what I call the sidebar menu on the side here. You can see it has a little home icon, and that if you click that, it would take you back to looking at the XBee device itself. But similarly here, you have a second menu, and I call this the device menu. And you can see some of the icons are the same. Today, we're going to focus on the device menu. If I want you to do anything else, I will be specific about it. So the device menu is where we'll be looking for everything. You can, for the most part, ignore the sidebar, at least for right now. The backstory is there are two ways of thinking about how to configure an XBee. You could either say, oh, I want to go into configuration and pick an XBee, or you could pick an XBee and then say, I want to configure it. And this supports both pathways. So that's why there's two menus, for better or worse. All right, but we're going to focus on this menu. And the first thing you see here is you're on the dashboard for the device. And the dashboard includes a bunch of useful information. So, for example, you can see the IMEI, which is the unique ID of your device, which you will need for a variety of things. You can see the firmware version. This will allow you to update the firmware. Firmware updates don't happen automatically because we don't want that in the embedded world. We want control of it. So, but it will tell you if you are on a previous firmware, and in general, it's the right idea to update as soon as you can because there are security fixes, bug fixes, that sort of thing. This is an icon that lets you know it has a little cloud here and it says disconnected. And this means that it's currently not connected to Remote Manager. It doesn't mean the device itself does not have a cellular connection. I point that out because it confuses people sometimes. And then on the bottom of the dashboard here are a lot of quick action tiles. And these quick actions are kind of collections of commands and interfaces to help make it easier to configure the XBee. So if you worked in XCTU, there's a lot of like AT commands and hexadecimals, and we're trying to move away from that, move people up to a higher level, and just think about the tasks you want to do. So if you want to get into Bluetooth configuration, you can just go in this way and not have to deal with like weird little setup code. So again, making it faster and easier to get to market. Okay. Second item down on the device menu is settings. We won't go into much detail about this, but I want to show you where they are. All of the settings here can be configured individually. Each has a little info box. So you can find out what they are. Today, we will not be manually doing settings. We're going to use a system called Profiles, which I'll describe in a minute. This is the firmware update area. You can see here's your product. Here are the different firmware versions for it. And you're on the newest one. Your current one is the newest one, so you're all set here. But otherwise, you can update the device, and this will update devices that are either plugged into your computer locally or update devices through the cloud if the devices are remote. Same interface, which is pretty neat. Okay, profiles are a collection. So a profile is a single file that has firmware version needed. It's got all the settings for the device. It's got the ability to run scripts before or after it, and it can also set up your file system. So if you have a MicroPython application, this can install it. So a profile is a great way. Your first XBee, you're going to be going through, playing with the settings, moving files around. Once you've got it right, and you're like, this is it. This is the sensor I'm going to put on my dog collar, right? Then you can go into production with the profile. So you just take the XBee, squirt the profile onto it, have all the files, the right firmware version, the right settings, everything you need in a single step. And we actually make a programming device where you can put, they're daisy chainable, so you're not limited to 6. But if you buy a single device, you can just pop XBees in, and it's made for manufacturing. So it will have, you pop the XBee in, it has a green light, it goes red while it's programming it, it goes green again, that means it's successful, you pull it out. So an operator can run this with really no knowledge of what's going on under the hood, making it easy to manufacture. That's the production side, not the prototyping side of the world. And I'll show you in a little bit kind of what goes into making a profile. Next item down the menu I wanted to point out, this is the MicroPython terminal. MicroPython and Python both feature an interface called a REPL, the read, evaluate, print loop. And that's kind of a fancy way of saying it's a programming command line interface, if you will. So you can just type individual lines of Python code, hit return, and then it'll process that one line of code, store your variables, whatever, and set you up for typing your next line of code. This is a great way to learn Python because you can do just a little bit at a time and see immediately what's going on. It's also good for Python experts because you can try out a new idea or a syntax or a new library just by typing a little code and not by having to set up a file and import it and then like reboot the device and run it. So this is available also locally and through the cloud, which I think is a really cool feature. So you can actually go in from here to a device, let's say it's, let's say it's in South America, and type commands, and those commands will be executed remotely, just like you do all the time for a remote Linux box or something like that, except this is just a little cellular module. Last item on the list that I wanted to show is the file system. So you can also store files. This is important for MicroPython files, but you can also store modules or libraries that are needed. You can write your own files to the file system. I use that in our GPS demo. I write the latitude and longitude once I picked it up so that it can be reproduced in case we lose GPS signal. And I just make my own file for that. You can also store and securely store certificates on the device. Very important if you're connecting something like AWS or you've got your own security certificates. So I mentioned, by the way, we're not going to do this right now, but this is the interface. This is just in list mode. You were in individual icon mode. So remember when we had that little green XBee up here right at the beginning? This is just, if we go into list mode, you would just see a single list entry. But the reason it's in list mode is because this is a screenshot of it connecting with the whole sensor lab. And the sensor lab is all configured through Digi Remote Manager. And so we can get to any item in the sensor lab. I can do this right now for the ones downstairs, get in there, reprogram them, move files around, update the firmware, whatever I want to do. This is the interface for that. It's in the documentation. Really useful feature. Since we're talking about Digi Remote Manager, let me tell you some of the things that it can do. So its primary purpose is remote device configuration. And you can do that either manually by going to its user interface and typing in whatever command change that you want, or in an automated way. So if you're handling 1,000 devices and you need to update one setting on them, you of course don't want to do that by hand 1,000 times, and some of those devices might not be connected. Remote Manager supports devices that are sleeping or disconnected in its scripting operation. So if the device isn't connected at the time, it's like, okay, I didn't do that one, and then in your script it'll say to go back later, how long it should keep going back. All of that stuff can be programmed in. So you can have a very sophisticated system of updating devices, or as an individual user of one device, you can just go in and change your commands. So you don't have to go through the complex scripting system, but it really comes in handy once you're looking at thousands of devices. There's a full API available, so anything you can do in Remote Manager through the online interface can also be done in an automated way, so you can plug your business systems into Remote Manager and then use APIs. There's push monitors, so you can go either direction with the data. And it's a very complete system as well, so you can write pretty sophisticated programs against Digi Remote Manager. Other important features, remote firmware updates, which I think are really a vital feature. Digi Remote Manager also has support for data streams. And you can think of this as kind of a light way of acquiring your data. So it's very easy to pass the data up to Digi Remote Manager. And that data shows up in a data stream, which we'll look at it today through the interface, but mostly you would grab the data using an API, bring it to your own system, and process it there for whatever you want. It is not a complete data management system with statistical packages and complete dashboard building or anything like that. It's a relatively simple system with everything you need to pass IoT data up to the cloud and not worry about it after that. We talked about the scripting, so I think we're all set there. So the next thing we're going to do is sign into Digi Remote Manager, but we're not going to sign in using the online interface. We're actually going to sign in through XBee Studio. So I can show you how we're passing data through. So the next thing you're going to do is on the quick actions on your dashboard, you want to click on Remote Manager Account. Make sure it's Remote Manager Account. There's also a Remote Manager Connection. You want the one with account. And once you do that, you'll see a screen that looks like this, which probably says, let me know if it doesn't, says no accounts added yet. So we're going to add the group account. So you're going to click the Add It Now button. And then you'll see a screen that shows Manage Accounts. And in those Manage Accounts, you're going to put in our workshop group username and password. They're very similar. So the group username is workshop01, capital W on workshop. And the password is the same, except it starts with this exclamation point. So exclamation point workshop01 is your password. And once that's done, you will see Workshop 01 as the added account here. You can't see it here on the slide, but where it says no accounts added yet, you'll see it there. Once you've got that, do you get?
Success.
Oh, success. Good. OK, you got that. Once you have that set up, you're going to, the easy way to do it is click on this back arrow twice, and you will see Add Device to Digi Remote Manager. You'll see the Remote Manager account you want to add the device to, so you can just click on that account and then click Register, and you're all set. And it'll show you a confirmation box. So again, in class, normally the next thing I would do if you're on your own laptop is you would download this profile that we're going to install. But again, to save time, it's already on the desktop of your computers. So it's already downloaded, so we don't have to worry about this. And what we're going to do on the device menu, so if you, from the device menu, you're going to click on Profile Update, load a profile, and then if you navigate to the desktop on your computer, you should see Sensor Data Profile.xpro. That's the one you want to load, and then it's going to work on your XBee for a little while. What it's going to do is set all the settings. It's going to configure the file system, and then it's going to load all the files needed into the file system. You could also require a specific version of firmware to be on the device, either current, older, newer, whatever. That's an optional part of the profiles. So it'll go through, configure, and you'll eventually get a green check mark. That means that you're done. It may go to 100% a couple times before that. That's normal. And then what you've done is you've actually loaded the sensor data files. You've loaded the configuration that's going to allow you to automatically connect to Digi Remote Manager and upload data streams. All of that stuff will get done there. I mentioned, by the way, that I'd talk a little about making profiles. And this is the interface, and you get there from using this top-level navigation menu, the sidebar. So through this code thing, there's a way to get into profiles. I don't want to belabor the point. But you put in a description, the firmware you want. You set all the settings the way you want them. You put the files you want in the file system in. You can also add some custom scripts if that's useful in a manufacturing process. Totally optional, so you don't have to worry about that when you only have one device. And it will just build this file for you. You can then give the file, if one of you built a file and gave it to me, I could put it on my XBee, and it would be exactly the same as your XBee. So really useful configuration tool. You can also work manually. OK, once you've set up your device, go back to the dashboard and use the quick action device reset. And what that will do, the device will just go back, reboot itself, and it's going to say, hey, I have MicroPython programs. I've been configured to automatically launch them. That's part of the profile. And I'm going to go ahead and run that MicroPython program. The MicroPython program and library that you loaded, because there's a library for the sensor device as well. So those two will work together, extract data from the real world, parse it, ship it up to Digi Remote Manager, and then we're going to look at it through the Digi Remote Manager interface and see that our data got there. You might want to check the last few numbers of your IMEI, just because we'll be looking for those numbers in your upload, so you can see your actual temperature and humidity upload and warm up your device. That's the fastest way to find it. Okay, so we're doing good on time. The next thing we're going to do is look at those data streams, because you're already creating them now and shipping data up to Digi Remote Manager. It was that fast to get going. A lot of my talking, but not much of your work. So let's go to remotemanager.digi.com. Eventually, this is where you'll sign into your individual account, but today we're going to sign into the workshop account. And same username and password, workshop01 and exclamation point workshop01, or bang workshop01 if you're from the old days. So remotemanager.digi.com. And workshop01 with a capital W, and the password exclamation point workshop01, capital W. Okay, and then once you are in, we're going to go on the left navigation to data streams. And if everything worked well, you will see a live data stream that ends. This is your IMEI number here. So mine ended in 3143. I was the only person in this account, so there's just two, but there should be a lot of other stuff in your data streams. So you should be able to see your temperature and humidity values. You can find these by your IMEI number, and then if you warm it up or breathe on it or something like that, I don't care if you breathe on them. COVID's over, I hope. You'll be able to see those numbers change. You might have to hit the reload button to see the update on the numbers. So normally the way you would pick up this data is through the API. You plug it into your system and process it however you wanted. But today we'll just look at it right here online. And yeah, that looks like live data. That's great. All right, so that is how quickly you can get data onto a cloud platform using XBee Cellular. Questions? Any kind? Cool.
I suppose it's doing
Yes.
MQTT publishing, right? The sensors?
Yeah, so not, in the case of Digi Remote Manager, not MQTT under the hood, but there is an in-house protocol that's used for that. So yeah, but the devices can also do MQTT. I've done MQTT from them to AWS.
Via the Digi Remote Manager?
No, not that's just direct. So you can run MQTT directly out of MicroPython and just send it to any random area. So Remote Manager is recommended, but not at all required. So you don't have to go through Remote Manager. The way I actually recommend people consider is maybe go direct to your own application, but make sure that you have Remote Manager also, because that's the way you'll be able to get in and manage the devices, update firmware, do over-the-air updates. Incredibly useful. It can help you push your data if you need it, but you're not in any way forced to go through it. Yeah.
Digi software for that, like the management of the binary stuff to update software.
Yes.
Have our own stuff running on separate, like,
Yeah.
sensor reading driver and updating to some MQTT
Yeah.
stuff.
That's exactly right. And what I like about that is it gives you two different avenues to talk to your own devices. So if one breaks down, you make a mistake in your code, whatever you were doing isn't working. Now you have DRM, Digi RM, you can come in and say, oh, I got to fix these files. I messed up. It's happened to me. Boy, was I happy to have a second pathway, because often in our world of connected devices, you send the device out into the world and you never see it again. It's locked in someone's factory. Right? You can't go in. So if you need to do anything, having that second pathway, incredibly valuable. Before we end, I mentioned we'd talk about the pinouts. So this is the pin layout, 20 pins, numbered the usual way for embedded stuff. And here's what they're all connected to. So now, you're not going to memorize all of this or anything, but I want to just point out, powering the XBee is very simple. You've just got power and ground, 3.3 volt. And often the other two pins that you'll connect are maybe the UART for data in and data out. So that's if you're talking to a host device over the UART. Notice there's also a secondary UART available. So you can talk to two different things over the UART. Maybe one is for user configuration, maybe the other is to talk to another component in the system. You're not limited to the UART. You have SPI also available. And you have I2C, which is what we were using today to grab that temperature humidity data. And all the digital pins, so you have a whole set of digital I/O. You also have PWM output, so analog or pseudo-analog output. And you have ADCs, analog input. So you can work with I2C sensors. It's very quick, but you can work with pretty much anything on a device. And the programmability really helps you with that. So rather than just, okay, this pin is high and I'm transmitting it, you can decide, oh, that pin is high, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to make this other pin low and activate the fan. Temperature is too high or it's been too high for too long. Really sophisticated stuff that you're able to do with the onboard processing. The XBee's onboard processing is really good, but it is somewhat resource limited. It is not a complete computer system. So the way to think about it really is terrific for if you're making a leak detection, water leak detection sensor, or maybe you're doing a heart rate monitor. All of that could be run on the XBee itself. Or maybe there's stuff, maybe you have a complicated host device. It's measuring, I don't know, glucose. The XBee's not going to do everything that's needed for that or get certified for it. But you can plug your XBee in, and that XBee can serve as a secondary processor. So maybe your machine produces a stream of data, but you mostly don't want to look at it unless the data, unless your temperature gets too high or there's something specific about the data that you're interested in, and then you want to run an alarm. That's a great use for XBee3 devices too. You use the somewhat limited processing to kind of leverage better interaction with your host device. With all that, I think I'm ready to wrap up. I could show you a few more things, but I also want to know if there's questions.
One question, is the board limited to some area or can it be used all over the world?
It can be used all over the world? It can be used all over the world. So it is, so the XBee Cellular that you're working with right now is our global model. It will work anywhere in the world. It is certified for most of the world where you'd want to use it. If you're using it in some odd country, we can help you with certifications. Certification is one of the hardest things that we have to work in cellular and in wireless. Digi has a ton of experience with it, and we've gotten people set up to run in countries all over the world. But in general, this device will turn on and just work just like your cell phone does. The only other thing to pay attention to is make sure that your antenna covers the bands in that particular country. This antenna is a great one and will work globally. However, if you know you'll only be in a certain region, maybe you can get a cheaper antenna or one that's less full-featured or smaller or something like that. So, even with something like this, you'll be able to get everything that you need. Other questions? All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm happy to talk more about anything to do with XBee Cellular or XBees in general. Like I said, I wrote a book, so I'm always happy to divulge that. Since we have a little more time, I'd just be interested in knowing what type of market you work in and what your use cases are. So if we could do a quick go around the room and just...
So Thomas Schön, I'm working for automotive things for telematics for city buses. Just for
Oh, great. So are you getting not just where they are you also getting into the vehicle data?
For maintenance purposes, so they're directed.
So like the J1939 or whatever,
Yes,
yeah?
for example,
Yeah.
you're right, yeah.
Yeah, I worked a little in that area. Not everyone knows those codes. Terrific, yeah. Well, so cellular, super useful solution, and actually getting that vehicle data, perfect, XBee Cellular, perfect for that. Absolutely perfect for it. And being able to make decisions locally too. So this is a great example. You get a flood of vehicle data coming at you. Most of it is not interesting. Some of it is essential maintenance data, and you can filter that out in the XBee or somewhere else. I mean, there are certainly uses for an external microcontroller as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on we are building management systems in special cases lighting control.
Lighting control. Okay, yeah, we've done a lot of work in lighting. You know, the ZigBee legacy, of course. But we've done cellular lighting. One of my favorites is antennas that have to have the red blinking light on top. Well, there's a rule that if the red blinking light stops blinking, you have to fix it within, it's incredibly fast, within like 4 hours, because you don't want a plane to hit it. And so we did monitoring of those, and that's a great example for cellular because you're not going to be wired to anything else and you want to be independent. So yeah, what are you working in?
Yeah, my project, I'm working for a Leica camera, so we are doing digital cameras. Right now, I don't see a use case for the XBee module, sorry, but
Yeah.
usually, I mean, connectivity is a big issue, so or a big thing. But usually, we have a demand for high data rates in that case.
Yeah, so we go up to a Cat4 module that is almost ready to be released. So that would work for something like camera data. The Cat4. So LTE-M, not enough bandwidth to do that. Cat4 is enough. You might even need more, but that's the area where you want to start looking. I would not work with this particular module for that. But that said, if you're doing, like if your camera work is like uploading stills or something like that, it's no problem. Even the Cat1 is going to be able to do that. For Cat4 for video, it's enough. Even for higher end video, but you probably don't want to send tons. If it's a constant stream, that might be a little much. But also really good for managing the systems too, so depending. Tell me a little about what you're working in.
Yeah, I'm working for Digi IoT. We are the world's market leader for motorizing systems for home and medical market. And NB-IoT especially would be very interesting for maintenance and upgrading and so for medical beds.
I could definitely see that.
High volume.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's great about using cellular for something like that is you don't have to worry about any of the local wireless environment. So, you know, if we're instrumenting a factory, the factory isn't going anywhere, the instruments aren't going anywhere. Something like that, you know, mesh networking technology may be a good solution. There are other questions to ask. But we find often going into schools or hospitals, even though they're all networked, getting on that network can be a huge problem. And if you only have a few devices in there, shipping that data out through cellular means you're free of all of their IT department. Or for homes, for something like a medical bed where you don't know where it's going, you don't know who's going to be using it, so they're not going to be your IT department, and cellular gets you out of all that. Tell me something about your stuff.
Also lighting control.
Yeah, lighting control again. Yeah, we've done, like I said, tons of lighting control with ZigBee or with DigiMesh, which is our in-house mesh networking. Which is kind of a mirror to ZigBee. It does some things really well that ZigBee doesn't do well. And ZigBee likewise has some features that DigiMesh doesn't have. So depending, we could recommend one or the other system. But we've done a lot of professional lighting control. It's a big deal. Are you using, what are you using right now for wireless in lighting control? Or are you just building it?
Sorry to tell you, Plantronics. It's a question to switch over.
Right. Good. Okay. And what protocol from Lantronix is a ZigBee protocol you're using, or?
Xbox.
Okay. Great. Great. Well, we're happy to help you switch over, of course. And just to get you started trying it out, like that's the first thing to do is try our system. So we talk to us afterwards, and we can get you set up with a kit for that stuff as well. Yeah, we have a little more time.
and valves for optimizing heat system in buildings.
Oh, HVAC, yes. So again, a lot of background in that kind of thing. So we've done that with local mesh networking. Cellular has the same advantages. If you're in somewhere where you're not going to be able to get on the local network, or don't want to, either for security or convenience, cellular can get you outside of that. And it can be really an effective solution because the price has gone down so much. I mean, it's not going to be free, but it may be really much more cost effective to pay, $1 a month or €1 a month. Localize my pitch here. To get that done rather than dealing with some in-house building system. It really depends on the use case.
I'm from the same company.
Same company, so same thing, great.
From Kugelmann, we are developer and manufacturer of winter service vessels. And we have to provide all the data from the street. How much do you spray salt and brine? And we have to provide it to the local company.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. I've worked a little with companies like yours on a different project, and it's a great application. It's a great application for cellular. They were doing video also, so we were shipping up because they wanted to prove that they had plowed the street. But all of that data and the vehicle data, the maintenance data that we talked about earlier, all can be bundled together. And cellular is kind of the only solution for vehicles. I mean, there's some exceptions, but pretty much that's the way you're going to go.
So addressing is both ways, upstream and downstream, to update our CPU and our. So it might be very interesting.
Yeah. No, this is the XBee Cellular is a really good match for that. Capabilities on it, all the different I/O available to you. That would be pretty interesting. So happy to talk to you guys about that more. And same company. All right. Did we do everyone? I think we got everyone.
Maybe you want to say as well.
Sorry to interrupt you. You're the last two left, and we're just talking about what.
Tech, which is a public-private company in Portugal, research institution. It has more than 1,000 employees, so we have many different areas of action, research. Me personally, I'm a researcher there in robotics. Our main focus is mobile robotics, so underwater right now a lot.
How far underwater?
Well, the latest one we're building is for 4,000 meters.
Yeah, okay. So radio gets a little complicated.
One of the projects we're involved with since last year is for evaluating the impact of underwater mining. The European Union wants to evaluate this. It's one of the newest trends. So I also teach at the university level, and so wanted to get to know it a bit. I didn't work very much with the radio devices yet in microcontrollers, so it's nice to.
Yeah, and this is the microcontroller plus communications is I think the most fun thing for people to learn because you get the processing, but you can also kind of reach out to the rest of the world with it. So you're not just making a toaster or a coffee maker, but you're making something that everyone can access. That's why I like teaching about it, actually.
See,
so great.
I also teach about microcontrollers, but the radio side of it is.
That's newer, yeah.
A side that I want to explore more.
Yeah. So cellular is a great way to get into it. I first worked with XBees when I was in grad school, so I met them in school in a class. Mostly in a class, and then I ended up teaching some classes about them too at the same place. So yeah, radio, just communicating devices, even if it's over Ethernet, it creates all sorts of new capabilities. So I applaud your stepping into it. For working with microcontrollers, the simplest XBee to work with is probably the plain 802.15.4 one, where you can just people use those for cable replacement often because you plug a UART in one side, a UART in the other side, and without configuring the XBee at all, they'll just talk to each other. Not necessarily in the most efficient way, but it'll work. So it's very fast for students to get going with something like that.
I've worked, right?
Yeah.
The interesting part is something a bit more level.
Yeah, and then you can work in from there into lots of stuff. Well, thank you again for coming. So we're gonna, each of you gets to walk away with a kit. So take one, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4 on this.